And once again, good morning.
Oh, good morning,
I can't see through them. But I had these last year, and I saw them in the drawer, and I thought, oh, okay. So I won't distract you by wearing these. That's my only nod to Valentine's Day, because that's not what my message is about. But I do have a gift for the congregation in honor of your renovations and in honor of Valentine's Day. My former minister, my former pastor, Reverend Joan Gattuso, who now resides in Hawaii, has a new book, and it's called The Power of Forgiveness. And she said that she would send us a copy, the people that she's still in contact with. She would send us a copy, but we had to promise to buy another copy. So for some reason, I ended up with 2 extra copies. So this is yours if you want to use it to lend, if you want to use it to sell, whatever you like to do with it, because you can't dictate what people do with the gifts that you give. So however you want to use it, it's for you to use.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure. All right, my lesson today, my theme for these next 2 weeks is going to be courageous youth or courageous teenagers of the Bible. And part 1, the part that I'm going to do today is I refuse to eat the king's meat. Okay? This is part 1 of the talk. And we think of children or teenagers, especially now with things being different than they were when we were coming up. But people have always had problems with teenagers. And sometimes we get into this thing of it's hopeless. You know, our youth are just hopeless and we want to write them off. And this is a negative view of youth that's not limited to modern times. If we go all the way back to Plato, this is a quote that's attributed to Socrates in Plato's Republic. And listen to match this with what we have now. The children now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority. They show disrespect for elders and love chatter in place of exercise. Children are now tyrants, not the servants of their households. They no longer rise when elders enter the room. They contradict their parents, chatter before company, gobble up dainties at the table, cross their legs, and tyrannize their teachers. And I can relate to that one. Not all of them. So, fortunately, there have always been youth who have served as an example to counter that. And these are found in the New Bible, in both the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament. That's what they're calling the Old Testament now, the Hebrew Bible, and the New Testament. So the Bible gives us impressive lists of teenagers who were not mixed up and who did not fit that description. They knew what they believed, they were committed, and they knew where they were going in life. So they had goals. Youngsters who stood for something are not likely to easily fall for anything. And I used to have that poster in my classroom. And I don't know how many people paid attention to it, but I liked it. It says, people who stand for something are not likely to fall for anything. And that's because they have a foundation. As some examples, Joseph beat sexual temptation because when Potiphar's wife came at him, he rejected her. He didn't go along with that. David showed exemplary courage in the face of danger. Now, he was a bad boy, but he had courage. Josiah stood firm on ethics, and Daniel demonstrated that integrity need not necessarily stand in the way of promotion. New Thought youngsters include the apostles and Timothy, and they derive great satisfaction in living the Christian principles. Now, we have to remember that the lifespan wasn't as long. At that time, you were lucky if you lived to be 40 years old. But these people were doing this when they were young. So 4 of the most outstanding examples of exemplary young people can be found in the Old Testament book of Daniel. And that's where my lesson is coming from today. They are Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and Daniel himself, who is credited with writing the book of Daniel. Their experiences can be applied in our lives, particularly when we look at them through a metaphysical lens. And we do that because the thing about the Bible and taking the Bible literally is that it's not historical in many cases. There is some history in the Bible, but you have, for example, two creation stories. There are two creation stories in Genesis. So that's why Unity chooses to look at the Bible metaphysically. So the story of Daniel and his three friends take place during the Babylonian exile, because we know that Babylon came in, defeated the Hebrews, and took them off to live in Babylon from Jerusalem. The book of Daniel was written or edited much later. This happened around 586 to 536, and we know that the time goes backwards there. The book of Daniel is divided into two parts. Book 1, chapters 1 through 6, that recount the story of the hero Daniel, who remains steadfast in his faith under adverse conditions. And you'll see how adverse in a moment. In book 2, chapters 7 through 12, Daniel, the interpreter of other people's dreams, gives us an account of his own apocalyptic visions of the end of time. It is believed that Daniel was one of the last books of the Hebrew Bible to be written before it was regarded as closed. The names and the dates of Babylonian and later Persian kings in Daniel are confused, and Daniel should be read not as a work of history, but as inspired allegory that reflects events in Judah at the time of Antiochus IV. And this gives us another reason for looking at the story metaphysically. Now this week I'm going to talk about Daniel. Next week I'll talk about, I love to say these names, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. If you ever watched the show Designing Women, the actor in there, his name was Meshach Taylor. That was his name. And I guess that's where it comes from, because a lot of names, especially earlier in time, people took their names from the Bible. And many of us have names that come from the Bible, or a derivation of those names. Now Daniel was really close to Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. He took them under his wing, and he became their leader. So they looked up to Daniel. Now, as part of their training regime in Babylon, because the king of Babylon was interested in getting these strong young men who were not only physically strong, but were men of character, they were fit, and very, very intelligent. And these were the type of people that he wanted. So they had to be trained, of course, in the Babylonian ways. And as part of their regime, they were also required to adopt a diet that included ingestion of forbidden foods that didn't meet the Hebrew standards. Because remember, they were foreigners in a strange land. So instead of eating these foods, the four friends decided to eat a vegetarian diet. They thrived on that diet, and it consisted of vegetables and water. They thrived on the diet, proving that it's possible to keep the dietary code in a foreign environment with a few restrictions and adaptations. So to avoid punishment, because they were told, no, you can't eat this. You got to eat the meat and you got to drink the wine. This is how you become strong and what we want you to be. So Daniel was very shrewd. So he made a deal. He persuaded the palace master to let the four of them, he and his three friends, maintain their vegetarian diet of vegetables and water for 10 days. And he told them that if at the end of those 10 days their appearance was worse than that of the other young men, they would follow the royal diet and eat the meat, drink the wine, and the other foods that the Hebrews deemed unhealthy. So at the end of the 10 days, the four were much healthier than their counterparts. Can you imagine why? As a result, they were allowed to maintain their diet and also to practice other aspects of their faith. So now, a side note. Have you ever heard of Reverend Rick Warren of the Saddleback Church in California? He has a best-selling book called The Purpose-Driven Life, and he has some other stuff. Well, he also wrote a book called The Daniel Plan, and it's based on the principles that are found in the book of Daniel. Now, he said he was baptizing people one Sunday, and it's not just sprinkling water. They baptize by the way John the Baptist baptized Jesus. You have to go under the water. And what I had to go under the water when I was baptized many moons ago. But anyway, he was baptizing these people, and they have a huge congregation, and they have several branches of their church, even in other countries. But he was baptizing these people, and I forget how many he said there were. But he was, dunking them and bringing them back up. Dunking them and bringing them back up. Dunking them and bringing them back up. And the first line in his book is, "Wow, everybody's fat." So he was getting tired, lifting these heavy people. Wow, everybody's fat. And then he looked around and he realized, I'm fat too. So he took this diet and he challenged his congregation and he said, who wants to lose some weight with me? So he was thinking, just on a fluke, nobody would respond to that. He had 12,000 people to sign up.
Wow.
Now remember, this is a huge congregation with many, many branches. So he had 12,000 people to sign up. And the Daniel Plan was born. So when all these people signed up, he said, well, I got to do something here. I have to come up with this plan. So he looked to the book of Daniel for that. And the Daniel Plan is framed around these 5 essentials, like our 5 principles. And the 5 essentials are faith, food, fitness, focus, and friends. Life areas that all work together to restore and sustain long-term health. Now, we know diets don't work. I have several friends who have been on numerous diets, and then they lose and they look real cute, have on the fancy clothes, and some of them just really, as the kids would say, fly. They get fly and lose all this weight, and you see them a year later, and they put it back on. So we know diets don't work, and the people spend a lot of money on these. I have a friend who has spent numerous dollars, many dollars on these types of plans. And it's been proven that they don't work. If you want to be healthier, you have to change your lifestyle. Simple as that. So that's what this is based on. And as testament to the efficacy of the Daniel Plan, of all the people who signed up, they collectively lost more than 250,000 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, using this diet. Now, Rick Warren himself, he lost the weight, but he said he put it back on. And the reason why he put it back on is he had several things to happen during that time. He had a son who was mentally ill, and his son committed suicide. So several things happened during that time. So he put the weight back on. So he had to go back to the plan. He went back to the plan. And if you see him now, as compared to earlier, he has managed to keep the weight off. So now, we see why Daniel and his friends prevailed in the challenge, because it worked for them. So back to our story. At the end of their training, they were brought to King Nebuchadnezzar to be interviewed. Out of all the young men, not one was found to be equal to those 4. And there were hundreds of them. In matters of wisdom and understanding, they were found to be 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in the court. As a result, Daniel was retained as an advisor to King Nebuchadnezzar. His chief asset was his ability to interpret the dreams of Nebuchadnezzar, because he would have these dreams and he knew that they were significant, but nobody could interpret them. Daniel could. So Daniel was able to interpret the dreams when nobody else was able to do so. And the king made him a big deal. He had an important post, and he was an administrator, more or less. And then he asked if his three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, could also come in with me and rule over the affairs of a province in Babylon. The request was granted. Daniel stayed at court, of course, and he grew so much in influence to the point where he was clothed in purple. And we know purple is the color associated with royalty, with our crown chakra, with nobility, and all these good things. So he was able to wear the purple. He had a gold chain put around his neck, and it's not unusual to see those today. Some of them aren't real, but they put a gold chain around his neck, and it was proclaimed by then King Belshazzar that he would rank third in the kingdom. So he rose up pretty high. Now things changed when Belshazzar was killed, and Darius the Mede came into possession of the kingdom. This event marked the beginning of Daniel's troubles, unfortunately. The other officials in the kingdom became jealous of his growing influence over the king and began to find grounds for complaint against him. So when unable to find anything, they turned to one area where there was a possibility of vulnerability, and that was his religion, because he faithfully practiced his religion. So they got together and they went to the king and proposed an ordinance that would enforce an interdict that whoever prays to anyone, be it divine or human, other than you, King Darius, for 30 days would be thrown into a den of lions. They convinced Darius to sign the document and the interdict. And Darius was reluctant because he liked Daniel. You know, Daniel was cool. He didn't want to do anything to Daniel. Daniel, fully aware of the interdict, continued to go to his house. Now he knew what it was all about. He wasn't supposed to pray to anybody other than the king. So Daniel went to his house and he got down on his knees and he prayed. Business as usual. And he knew that there would be consequences for this. So he was caught. They spied on him and they caught him, and they took him to the king and insisted that the king enforce the law. Now this is the law, you have to enforce it. So Darius didn't have a choice, he had to enforce the law. But he was obviously distressed about this because he didn't want to do that. So he reluctantly gave the order to have Daniel thrown to the lions. Yeah. We've probably heard this as a childhood story about Daniel in the lion's den. So to ensure that he couldn't escape, a stone was laid across the entrance to the den, and the king sealed it with his signet and with the signet of his lords. Does that sound familiar with what they did to Jesus, to the body of Jesus? Still distressed by the events, the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting, unable to sleep. At dawn, he rushed to the den of lions, and when he was near the entrance, he called Daniel's name and asked, "Oh, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you faithfully serve, been able to deliver you from the lions?" That's in Daniel 6. And Daniel replied, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lion's mouth so that they would not hurt me, because I was found blameless before him and also before you, because I knew that you knew that I hadn't done anything." The king was filled with joy, and he commanded that Daniel be removed from the lion's den. In yet another example of the blood and the gore that's found in the Old Testament, the king commanded that Daniel's accusers, their wives, and their children be thrown into the den, where they were indeed destroyed by the lions.
Wow.
Daniel had once again characteristically demonstrated his unshakable faith in the faith of adversity. Now faith, I mentioned faith because faith is at the head of the 12 powers, because if we want to develop our 12 powers, we have to have faith, and we have to develop faith first. But the other divine power that Daniel demonstrated here was strength. And February is the month in which we focus on this power of strength. And strength, this is what strength is, and I'll just review these. Strength is our ability to be still. So Daniel was still. What did he do? He went home and he prayed. And not only did he pray once, he prayed 3 times that day, business as usual. So he was still. His strength, our strength, allows us to stick with divine ideas. He held to his convictions, regardless of what else was going on. Now, strength has 4 spiritual aspects. First one is patience. And I found myself having to practice this last week because I have 2 people that I pick up for church on Sunday, and I had to come back to church that afternoon for a program. So I'm standing there, I'm waiting, and I'm waiting. So one of the ladies comes out the restroom, and then I said, "Where is the other lady?" And she said, "I don't know, I'm going to go find her." So she's back in the sanctuary getting somebody to take her picture. You know, she said, "I have to have a picture for this job I'm applying for," and I could understand that. But it was also, I had to practice patience because I needed to get going. So she finally came along, everything was all right, and I was able to go back in time for the program. The other aspect, the second aspect of strength is tolerance. And that applies to us because we have to be tolerant of other people's actions, habits, their religious opinions and beliefs. Our tolerance, my tolerance is being tested with these debates. But, you know, with the debates and the presidential elections, and, you know, a couple of those guys really challenged me, I have to tell you. But we have to exercise tolerance. They have a right to say what they're saying. They have a right to believe what they believe. And we have to have tolerance for that. Steadfastness. Steadfastness. The ability to keep on keeping on. In spite of everything that's going on, we have to be steadfast in our faith and in our exercise of our divine powers. Balance between thinking and feeling, because Daniel exhibited all of those. His thinking was in alignment with his faith. His feelings were in alignment with his faith, even though they were contrary to the environment that he was thrown into. He also exhibited both physical and spiritual strength. Now, there's one misconception about strength, because it has often been associated with physical exertion, force, and pressure. Lift that heavy load, tote that barge, whatever, with that bale, whatever it is, you know. And this is what we associate strength with, but it's much more to it than that. True strength endows us with a greater power than the ability to move things about. You know, and I have nothing against people being physically strong. I mean, if you're moving, that's really nice. They want to come over and help you. One of the ways that strength manifests itself in our conscience, as I said before, is in the form of patience. And patience is calm, uncomplaining endurance.
Oh, wood.
Oh, I gotta go. Come on. You know, so instead of doing that, you know, and I was standing around some, and one of the young ladies that rides with me, she was doing, you know, eyes into the sky, and I said, no, this is February. we have to practice strength in the form of patience. Oh, okay, and I take that back. She calls me Miss Karen. Miss Karen. Okay, Miss Karen, I'll take that back. So anyway, patience is persistent courage. So I'm going to stand here and I'm going to be quiet and I'm not going to say anything until we are able to get going. So whenever we need to be courageous in a situation, all we have to do is become still. So you gotta come still, wait. She's coming, she'll be finished in a minute. And sure enough, she was. It is a deliberate spiritual step that all of us can take. Not drawing upon our source of patience can cause us to become irritable, intense, and react in anger and impatience. And I had to exercise that because I'm a key figure in the church. So, if I'm standing there and I'm getting angry at them for being late, so what does that say about, it would be a reflection of not only me, but also of our church. And these are relatively new people to the church. So spiritual strength also manifests in the form of tolerance, which is the ability to be fair to those with whom you don't agree. You have to stifle the urge to say something that's not so nice, or to regurgitate, which in some cases you might want to do. And you can't do that because, like I said, people have a right to how they feel, to how they think, and regardless of what you think. And you can't go around and you can't impose your ideas on other people. I have a cousin in Florida who is gay, and he studied with one of the other religious groups. I won't say what, because I don't want to prejudice anybody against anybody's religion, but he studied and he got pretty deep into it. So he got so deep into it that he decided, I'm going to come clean. And he came out and he told him he was gay. He never heard from him again. And my first impulse was to say, try unity.
Really?
Try science of mind. Even a United Church of Christ, they're very liberal. But I didn't do that because he has to find that for himself. And I hope that he does. I pray that he does, where he can be accepted for what he is. And he said, and I did it because I wanted them to know. I didn't want to hide. And there's a message, one of the Facebook messages, sometimes they're really funny, but there's one on there that says, in some cases, some of the churches that actually reject the gay people, or reject anyone for that matter, he wondered out loud, especially in the African American church, because African American church, for the most part, is against homosexuality. Now, I don't understand how you could be against something when everybody's been against you, but anyway, that's another story. Well, that's another story for another day. But he said, if all the black churches were to fire their ministers of music, there would be no music on Sunday. Because we know that people who express in that way are often very creative, very talented, and you have many people in Hollywood and other places, some that have come out and some that haven't. That's their business. But we enjoy what they're able to do. We enjoy their talent. So anyway, that's my comment for today. Daniel was steadfast in his consciousness. So he stayed fixed in a direction and unwavered in spite of all appearances. So if I had heard something like that, I can't pray the way I want to pray, and I can't do what I need to do, then if I do, I'm going to be thrown to the lions. I don't know if I could have gone home and said my prayers like Daniel did. Could I have done that? With the threat of being thrown to the lions? He did that, and he was a young man. So he stayed firm in his purpose. Balance was shown in his mental stability. Balance keeps us from being knocked off center by shifting circumstances. So he said, well, they have this law, so I got to follow the law. Sorry. But he didn't do that. He stayed firm. He did not allow that interdict to knock him off balance. It also allows us to reach a happy medium between our thinking and feeling nature. So strength is one of the tools of consciousness development that allows us to sense our oneness with God and to be patient, tolerant, steadfast, and in balance. So for our meditation today, we're going to talk about that. First, we'll do our song. Now, I used to fight with the controller up here. I used to get it wrong, and now that she's doing it, I'm looking for it. Just take in a deep breath. And release. It feels so good. One more time, take in a deep breath. And once again, release. And let's relax into the presence. Earlier we sang, God is love. And there's another verse to that. And that is, God is strength. That strength surrounds us. In that strength, we safely dwell. It's above, beneath, within. Strength is mine, and all is well. God is strength. God is strength, sweet strength. And that strength is ours. And because of that, all is well. Now let's turn to a consideration of the four aspects of faith and how they apply to you. Just think, and not to go into guilt or anything like that, but just think, where in my life can I practice a little bit more patience? With whom? With what situation? Because we know that the inevitable is change. Change is inevitable. Things are going to change. So it's up to us to have patience until they do. So look to find areas we can exercise more patience. Tolerance. Where can I be more tolerant? How can I be more tolerant? Does that include not staring at someone who is not quite like you, or saying things about them that aren't very nice, especially when you don't know them? So where can I be more tolerant in my life? With whom do I need to practice tolerance? Steadfastness. Can I do the things that I need to do on a daily basis? not just once or twice. Be that with a lifestyle change, a spiritual practice that we sometimes do and then we kind of fall off. So can we be steadfast with that? Balance. Can we strike a balance between our thinking and feeling? Consider our emotions. Not letting those emotions get in the way. Practicing balance between thinking and feeling. So we can be like Daniel. Not easy, but we can be like Daniel. We can be patient. We can be tolerant. We can be steadfast, and we can balance our thinking and feeling nature. And also a balance between doing the work that needs to be done and having some fun. Because God doesn't mean for us to walk around dour and unfeeling and just close down. So let's have balance in our activities and in our daily life. So just take a moment to consider these things. Strength is of God, and we are strong in the Lord. So now let's make our way back, knowing that we can go to this secret place at any time that we wish. But as I close, I love the prayer of faith, and it's been on my mind lately. So I'll read it now. God is my help in every need. God does my every hunger feed. God walks beside me, guides my way through every moment of the day. I now am wise, I now am true, patient, kind, and loving too. All things I am, can do, and be through Christ the truth that is in me. God is my health, I can't be sick. God is my strength in all of its four aspects, unfailing, quick. God is my all, I know no fear, since God and love and truth are here. And for that we give thanks, my friends. And as we come all the way back, just knowing that all of these things are true. Because the Christ in us can still